Right now, summer sports are in full swing. Baseball is firing on all cylinders, and there's a certain soccer tournament the world's watching. Something you should be watching is your vehicle's engine. That's why Pennzoil Synthetics gives you complete protection for top engine performance. Pennzoil. Make the switch.
This is the Best of Golic and Wingo podcast.
Golic and Wingo with you on ESPN Radio and ESPN News, presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests joining us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And that block charge is about time for some Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless, best phones, best networks, no contracts. Okay, we started the show with the end of the game, the J.R. Smith scenario, in which J.R. Smith was, J.R. Smith.
Right.
But just as significant, maybe even more is the thing that set that whole end of the game scenario into motion, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, so the situation was just under 40 seconds ago. The Cavs were up 2 in this situation. And then Kevin Durant drives the lane, LeBron gets in front, and initially a charge is called. So let's just stop there and think what that does. So now there's 39, I think, some seconds ago.
36.4.
36 point, okay.
Yeah, something like that.
So if nothing else, they can burn the clock 24 more seconds and then possibly score at least 2 to put themselves up to the possibility of 2 scores unless you foul someone shooting, a 3 and they make it. So that's the scenario of what they could have done. Burned a lot of time, possibly gone up 4 or 5 in this situation, but it goes to review. So, and this is where a lot of people wondered what's going on. You're saying, wait a minute, it's a judgment call. It's a judgment call. Why? And someone even tweeted about it. This is bogus. They changed the foul call made inside 2 minutes. Why couldn't they look at the 2 calls before that? And I'll tell you why. Because the only reason that they replay and change this call is because of the restricted area. And this is a rule that was put into play in 2012-13, that in the last 2 minutes of a game or in overtime, you can go to replay to see if a defender, in this case LeBron James, was standing in the restricted lane or not. That's the reason you go to replay. But while you're in the replay, you can change the actual judgment call. So you can say, well, he wasn't in the restricted area, but you can say, oh, you know what? That wasn't a charge. That was a block, which is exactly what they did. I stood there scratching my head saying, well, wait a minute. The only thing they should be able to do is change, was he standing in the restricted area or not? But they're changing a judgment call. I think it's ridiculous. Been a rule for 5 years, though.
Yep.
I didn't even know about it. I don't even know if there's some players that don't know about it. I think it's a ridiculous rule, but it is a rule. But you still get to, was it too close to change? Because, Steve, we're going to play some of the sound on both sides of the coin. Some thought it was a charge, some thought it was a block.
Here's what this amazes me, because what has dominated the NFL over the last couple of years? Was it a catch? Was it not a catch? Was there micro-inch movement of something that allowed it to be something? And the NFL's like, we don't want this. We don't need this. It's mucking up the game. It's driving people crazy. So we're getting rid of this. We are out of this business. And the NBA is like, let's swim there. Let's go into these waters because that's going to make things fun. And again, the idea that you can go to the replay over one thing and then see something else and change it. That's like saying, okay, was he inbounds or out of bounds? Oh, that was pass interference that we missed, so let's throw the flag on that. That makes no sense whatsoever.
It doesn't. It's inconsistent with the rest of the game. It's well-intentioned because you want to get the calls right. I'm not with the people that constantly say down the stretch of a game, you need to stuff the whistle, you need to let this go, you need to let them play, it's playoff basketball, all this stuff. No, if you're going to call it in the second quarter, call it in the final waning seconds of the game.
But that was the problem
right across the board.
They called nothing in the first half, and they started calling everything.
Well,
in the second.
as I said, overall, I thought the refs were horrible on both sides of the coin. Normally what you see in a situation like this, and we've all seen it if you've been on a field, is what can happen is if they called the block and didn't go to review, but one of the officials saw it as a charge, officials can huddle together and change the call. We see that happening in
That's
all
actually
sports.
Smart officiating.
Exactly right. But in this case, the impetus for going to replay again was the restricted line, and it is a rule. If you go to check the restricted line, you can then check if it was a block or a charge, depending on what the call was, which blew my mind. Yeah. I had no idea they could do that.
And again, if this had happened anywhere else, they couldn't have done it. Like if this at the three-point line, they couldn't have made this
It's all
call.
about the restricted line.
All right, so here's LeBron James on the call, obviously not pleased.
I thought I read that play just as well as I read any play in my career defensively. Seeing the drive, I was outside the charge line. I stepped in, took the contact. It's a huge play. It's a huge play.
So, it reminded me, and I can't remember who the Bears were playing this year, but remember John Fox thought the guy had scored, and then they went and looked at replay, and they realized he fumbled the ball out of bounds.
Right.
So if he hadn't challenged the play, they had a 1st and goal at the 1 and said, well, it hit the pylon, touchback team, the other team gets it. But that was something that was induced by the coach. This is the refs deciding to do it.
You can still have that, though, because all scoring plays are reviewed under 2 minutes. So in theory, you could have a scoring play that has that overturned by it. The NFL is not rid of this sort of problem. That's what happens when you introduce the idea of replay in these endgame moments, because, again, it's all born from the right place. You understand that we prioritize the end of games. For better or for worse, the last 2 minutes of a game to us are far more important than any other 2 minutes in the midst of a game. And so if you're the NFL or the NBA or any league, you say, all right, we'll follow suit. We'll make sure we get calls right. The problem is now you made the call a story in this game because of that.
And here's the question. Do you think they'll change this rule going forward? Because this seems like a ridiculous rule. It seems like an absolutely ridiculous rule.
I have always said, and it's always usually been about football and replay. The best replay out there is tennis, without a doubt.
Yeah, just put it on the computer.
Simple, right? I never thought you should be able to replay judgment because we started getting into that in the NFL. It's like you start doing pass interference and judgment calls and holding. I don't think I ever want that. I like getting the call right, but these are judgment calls. So when they said on the broadcast, it's not just about the restricted line, they can change a call, I was dumbfounded. But then I thought, you know what? It was so close. Now you start thinking reviews mean you need to see it clearly one way to change it. And I certainly didn't see it one way easily to change it.
The laughable part, too, is that he couldn't have been further from the restricted line.
I know.
Not even remotely in play in all this. So what a smokescreen just to get to go over there and just do what they should have done, huddled up and discussed. That seemed like what this was, because I can't believe as many times as referees call that specific scenario that they would look at that and say, man, I thought his feet might have been on that line.
Not even close.
Yeah, that's the thing. Again, good officiating is getting everybody together. Hey, did we get this right? We see that happen in the NFL all the time. But to go to replay, it seems so bogus. It seems so. That's like let's just see what they.
Well,
saw.
like I said, going to replay for the reason of is on the restricted line. I get now he was far away from it, but hey, while we're there, if we see anything else, we can change it.
Man.
But it's a rule. It is a rule, and I know we'll play Steve Javie, who was that official that's looking at everything. Yep. He saw it one way. Our own Tim Legler saw it another way. So it is one of those where people can look at it and see two different things.
Yeah, we'll have Steve Javie's interpretation of it, and we'll have what Michael Wilbon said, which I thought was really interesting about this. But again, the NBA is willing to go where the NFL is trying to get out of. Just put yourself in that scenario and understand you don't want these. We want to be talking about J.R. Smith and what did or didn't happen. You don't want to be talking about this.
No.
You don't want this to be one of the storylines leading up to what was really an unbelievable first game of the NBA Finals.
Golic
and Wingo.
and Wingo.
Mm-hmm. Trey Wingo and Mike Golic Sr.
Sports Center is brought to you by Sport Clips. Sport Clips haircut. Scott, how do I keep ending up with the Sport Clips one?
That is a cruel twist.
That is.
You know
Read
what?
that haircut, Baldy.
I get it, guys. But Sport Clips is actually probably the place I would go. They're inclined to do a nice buzz cut. Sport Clips and ESPN are teaming up for a Dad's Day getaway, an all-expense-paid trip to ESPN and a day spent with Golic and Wingo on our show right here. Register for your chance to win at sportclips.com/ESPN. No purchase necessary. See rules at sportclips.com/ESPN. U.S. only, age 18 and up, ends 6/15/18.
All right, Golic and Wingo with you on ESPN Radio and ESPN2. Leave us a voicemail. What did you think about either the Cavs' chances in Game 1, what J.R. Smith was thinking, or how this changes the series? It's 860-506-5505. Leave us a voicemail there, 860-506-5505. And we'll get into a couple of things. Oh, you got something?
I just have a great tweet from Mark that says, what was JR thinking? Should have just called a timeout. Sincerely, Chris Webber.
Oh, nicely done. Nicely
Yikes.
done. Who, by the way, he played for Golden State for a while, didn't he?
Yeah,
didn't Chris Webber play for Golden State? So we'll get into the Steve Javie thing on the block charge in a minute, but how much if the Cavs had won, did this change the dynamic of the
Oh,
entire
my
series?
gosh.
I mean, literally, how much could it have
To
changed?
steal that game, everybody talking about, a sweep or a gentleman's sweep, it being 4-1 and Cleveland really not having a shot, and it basically playing out the way everybody would thought LeBron would get the lion's share of everything, and would he have enough help from everybody else? Horrible three-point shooting, especially through most of this game, actually. Golden State started hitting him more at the end, but what a confidence builder this would have been if they could have got that split on the road out of the way in game one to take some pressure off.
And I just think, because I know we got Ryan coming up, but talking about how much LeBron has left in the chambers now, how many outings like this he has, and what an opportunity for him to gauge his exertion going into game two if they had taken this one.
Yeah.
Because then you've stolen the game on the road that you need.
Right.
You can start to give more of that measured approach that we usually see out of LeBron James in game one in a lot of these series.
Yeah, you made a great point as I was driving in today listening. Normally he's a jab guy. Like, we'll feel out how things go.
Right.
That happened in game one of the Eastern Conference Finals against Boston. He had 15 points and I think 7 turnovers in that game. I think he knew that this was their best chance to steal one. And he came out blazing.
Let me put a number to it. In game ones this postseason, he's averaged 21 points. Yeah. In all the other games, 36 points. So to your point, he knew he needed to do more, and I'd say going 30 over your average is doing a little bit more.
He did a lot more. He looked like he was 23 out there. It was really ridiculous. But again, the block charge is as much of this as it is that what happened with J.R. Smith at the end of the game. Our own referee analyst, former ref Steve Javie in the NBA, broke down the block charge this way.
I looked at LeBron James' left foot. Yes, he was moving, but when somebody is firming up, in my opinion anyway, as long as that left foot was down, he can firm up. When you firm up, you're going to be moving. This is the kind of play, Scott, I think 50-50, that some guys will say it's a charge, some guys will say it's a block. I know in real time, it's definitely a charge. And in slow motion, instant replay, it's a really, really difficult play.
By the way, it's firming up. It's firming up, by the way, now the new football move?
Yeah, maybe.
Firming up.
It was
firming up.
You know what I did learn, though, and Mark Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy both said it, because what's the one thing I think that the fan looks for on a block charge was the defender moving?
Correct.
And they both said you can be moving.
Right.
But you can be moving, but it's when you establish yourself, because, again, we're going to have Tim Legler in here a little later. He was on with SVP after the game, and I was listening to him. He said, without question, from the first shot of it live, he thought it was blocking on LeBron. And he said one of the big reasons is LeBron turned his left shoulder into Durant. He didn't stay square. He turned the shoulder. He said to him it was a block all the way. And to
what
Javie,
did you see? What did you see?
I thought he was stationary. I mean, I thought it was a charge, but but I did see the foot move and moving a little bit until those guys said you can move, and then that's okay. But when Leg said that about the shoulder, because you can see LeBron turning that shoulder a little bit, but then it comes down to the call was going to. There were 2 calls. One ref called charge, one ref called block, but I think it was the head official who called charge. That's what it was going to be. It was going to be a charge until they changed that. So I was just surprised at the rule that said you could change it.
What did you see?
I saw a block. Yeah. I saw a block in that instance, but procedure is the most important part of this. We could have lived in that moment. There would have been enough on both sides for us to go with what they want. And instead, not only did the refs get time to relook at that, all of us did to form even stronger opinions and focus more on this moment rather than what else was going to go on around it.
And that is the thing that's got to be haunting Adam Silver and the NBA right now. This game had literally everything. Mm-hmm. Everything you would possibly want from a finals game one against a colossal favorite and a massive underdog, and you're like, wait a minute, this actually could be a series. And as much as the J.R. Smith blunder, we're talking about this, and that has got our own Michael Wilbon, let's say, heated.
That rule has to be changed. I mean, you're just walking around this arena talking to former players on other teams, former coaches. Almost nobody knew that 5 years ago the NBA instituted a rule that said you could go back and look at something like a judgment call. This isn't foot on the line, visual evidence. This isn't ball out of bounds, went off somebody's hands, visual evidence. This is a judgment call, which the league says it doesn't want replay to deal with. Leaning. Was he stationary? Was he moving? Was he sideways? You can't get into that and then go to replay. That call has to be made on the court and kept within the authority of the game officials.
I 1,000% agree, but also 1,000% understand nothing's going to happen with that rule, or at least it's not going to happen until the offseason. So the bottom line is...
there's no way they're changing rule during the finals.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So the point is, we all think the rule, I didn't even know it. I think it's a horrible rule, but it ain't changing, and it is a rule, and the refs did exactly what they are allowed to do. So, I mean, we have to live with that.
And what did Wilbon just say? Most people didn't even know this was a rule for the last 5 years, so it's not like we expect it to come up again and impact this series. Now, I know you always say this.
By the way, what do you bet it doesn't come back again and impact this series? I mean, think about it. Let's make sure we don't go down that road again, boys.
Well,
yeah,
right?
Hey, guys, do it a favor. Just call this one on the floor. Let's leave it be.
Golic.
I tell you what, a great sports night last night, no doubt about it.
And Wingo.
What a day, what a show, what a time.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I'm a one-trick pony, literally. I show up at kids' parties and act cute. That's pretty much it. So excuse me for being bitter. When Geico says not only could we save you money on car insurance, but we do more. Like give you 24/7 access online, over the phone, or even via our award-winning mobile app. Well, ooh la la. Aren't they multi-talented? Hey, I said organic carrots.
Geico. Expect great savings and a whole lot more.
We continue with you on Golic and Wingo, ESPN Radio and ESPN News. All phone guests join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And don't forget, leave us a voicemail, your thoughts on Game 1 of the NBA Finals. We played some of them already. They've been great. The number to call in and leave us a voicemail at is 860-506-5505. That's 860-506-5505. But no voicemail for this guy because he's one of the best in the business. Always glad to see Legs in the studio. NBA analyst Tim Legler joins us in studio giving us the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. All right, dealer's choice. Where do you want to start?
I got the rest of the show, right? Because I got a lot on my mind. I got a lot on my mind.
Where do you want to go?
I think let's start with what everyone wants to talk about more than anything else. It seems like is the block charge.
Yeah.
Right. Let's start with that. So I'm watching the game. And
so to set up everybody again, in case they didn't see her up late, there's like 36 seconds to go. The Cavs are up 2.
Yes.
And Kevin Durant drives the lane. LeBron steps in front. One ref calls a block. Another one calls a charge. It looked like the call was going to be a charge, and it was going to go the other way, which meant Cleveland would have the ball up to 36 seconds ago, so just figure it out from there. They could have run a lot of clock down, maybe been up 4 or 5 possibly, so you don't know where that would have gone. But they went to review because they wanted to know if he was in the restricted area or not. They changed the call to a block, and then there we go from there.
So I'm watching the game live when it happens the first time. It's so fast. It looked to me, my initial reaction was, it looked like he got there late and slid in. Then you could see Ken Mauer on the baseline, and he's waiting, he's pausing, because you could see he's making eye contact with the other official, and then he signals charge. And I'm like, all right, it's charge. It could have gone either way.
So if it was a charge, you didn't have a problem with them calling it?
Not in the moment like that, no, because as you can see, even on slow-mo replay, we got people arguing about it.
Right.
Now, once I saw the replay, it's clear to me that it was a block. But in the moment, no, I'm going, okay, they called the charge. I could see that. It could go either way. Now they're going to take it out. Now they huddle up. And then they go to the monitor. Now, I know the rule that now they're allowed to look at not just restricted area, which is what's supposed to trigger them to go over there.
Right.
They can now also look to see, did they get the call right? The legality of the defender.
So you knew that rule?
Yes.
Man, because
that's why you're the best.
But you just don't see it happen. It's like never reversed. So I'm watching it. Now, here's where I have a problem, and I can side with Cavs fans. I don't know why that would trigger them to go over because LeBron James was a foot outside the restricted area.
So your issue is there was no reason for them to review it because he was so far outside the restricted area, which then led to them saying, hey, while we're here, we can look at all this other stuff.
Correct, because if they're not worried about the restricted area and there are 2 refs to blow the whistle at the same time, they've got something different, they're going to make eye contact, they're going to determine who had the better angle, and then that guy's going to go with the call, and that's the end of it. But what they did was they tied in, well, let's make sure there was no restricted area situation here. That allows us to go to the monitor.
Gives them an excuse to go there and check it out.
And last night, late night, Joe Borgia, I thought had a pretty good explanation, which was the third official who hasn't been talked about much was Eddie Malloy. He's over on the sideline opposite the bench. He comes over because Jeff Green's foot goes into the restricted area, but he's not taking a block charge. Right. He's riding LeBron in, and Joe Borgia said, well, it's possible that Eddie Malloy, saw a leg in there, They see something on that line. Now he comes in and says, listen, we got to make sure we get this right with the restricted area because there's a foot in there. They go, now that gives them a reason to look. Now, so you can argue all you want about that part of it. Should they have gone over there? I can see why people be upset. He wasn't close to the restricted area, LeBron.
Right.
So you don't go over it all. But once they did, and they look at that replay in slow-mo as many times as we did, to me, that is a block once they've looked at it. He's late. He's turning. He's sliding, and I don't think he takes the full brunt if he doesn't continue and lean his upper body in. I don't think he takes the full brunt where it's an obvious charge to people. For me, that's a block. That's a traditional block, but what I've always known it to be. So I think that part they got right, but I don't think they necessarily had a reason to go over to the monitor.
Again, Tim Legler with us, our NBA analyst. This rule, which is going to come under so much scrutiny, is it's a time and place for the review because it's under 2 minutes and it's close to the restricted area. If this happened with 2 minutes and 3 seconds near the 3-point line, we're not having this discussion.
Correct.
Right?
They're just going with the call.
They're going with the call. So with that being said, as a former player as well as an analyst, do you like the idea that they can go and let's be honest, just like pass interference in the NFL, block charge is an interpretation. It's a judgment call, what it was. Do you like the ability that they have because of this rule and go, let's review that judgment call?
No, and I'll tell you why. Because you could take 100 officials.
Right.
Line them all up next to each other with a monitor in front of them, watch the replay, and you still aren't going to get a consensus. You're going to get 60-40, maybe. And so for me, it's such a subjective thing. The way you talk about pass interference, a good example. For me, it's so subjective. You have to go with what the initial call is. That's why I don't like the ability to go look at it, because to me, in a lot of cases, it's still not going to be conclusive in a lot of guys' minds, and officials are going to interpret that differently, including Steve Javie, who we went to in the moment while they're reviewing it. And Steve Javie, longtime NBA official, he's in the replay center, and he said, no, I think this is going to be a charge. It looks like he's got, legal defending position set up. So that's my point. If you're still going to get a lack of consensus by looking at it, then go with the initial call on the court. So that's on that kind of call. Now, if it's goaltending, something like that, it's a little bit easier to see. Somebody stepping on a line, that's
completely
different.
Agree. Yeah.
But this is something that's block charge, and since James Naismith invented the block charge, it's who knows, right? Everybody sees it differently, and it depends on who you want to win the game, typically, is how you see the call.
Right.
That's kind of how it goes.
Can't do anything about it now. If the rule is in place, they're not going to change it now, but I think everybody is going to agree, man, that's something they need to look at after the season, and maybe, say, reviewing a judgment call is just a bad way to go. We're going to get to the J.R. Reed at the end of the game.
J.R. Smith.
J.R. Smith, I'm sorry.
J.R. Reed was my
North Carolina, baby, number 34.
J.R. Smith at the end of the game. But at the very end of the game, what did you think of the Tristan Thompson call of tossing him right away when he went up to block a Livingston shot, who many think, why is Livingston taking that shot? Let the clock, the shot clock run out.
I got a lot to say on this topic,
so
too.
Go ahead.
My first point is this.
Legs is fired up today.
I am, because
what you want to know.
Not just last night. I've never understood when did we get to the point that you have to take a shot clock violation at the end of a game as a pro athlete.
Yeah.
I understand if the shot clock's off and you have a lead and they're conceding.
Dribble out.
Right. Dribble out the clock. Of course.
Right.
It's a basketball play. The shot clock is running out. We got to this point now where we're not allowed to take that shot. Does this hurt your little feelings? So now we got to hand you the ball because we're running it up on a pro athlete.
Okay, I can go with that.
It's a rule. I've never understood it. Okay, but clearly that is something now that we do at the end of games.
It aggravated them, but was it worthy of getting tossed?
Off. I don't know that he should have tossed him that quickly. I think
it didn't look like he even made contact.
No, I think that was an overreaction by Tony Brothers to throw him out right there. And I don't know if that's him just, hey, man, let's just hope there's no escalation or anything here. I don't think it was going to escalate. He was walking away from him.
Yep.
Just let the game end and let's move on our way. Ejects him. Now, Tristan Thompson, once you're ejected, you better get off the court.
Yeah.
So I know Draymond Green is taunting you and he's doing what he's doing.
Doing what he does.
You've already been ejected. You can't react to it. He comes back in. He shoves the ball in his face. Now we're waiting on that. So that's one element.
Yeah. There's a lot
and
of
then Kevin Love.
Kevin Love stepped out. For those that don't know, Kevin Love.
Oh, I got a lot on that too.
All right, wait.
Oh, boy.
Hold on.
For those that really quickly didn't know, Kevin Love came on the court. He was out of the game, then came on the court a couple of feet. So that's basically a big-time no-no that could cost you the next game. So that's under review.
Which, again, that goes back to that infamous series in the 90s between the Knicks and the Heat where everybody came off the bench and they had to judiciously do that. We'll get into that.
All right.
Legler is fired up.
He is.
Like fired up Legler.
Golic and Wingo.
It was all sort of one big giant Jell-O mold. It's very interesting where that went.
Fantastic tunes by Mikey C, Inside Mike, Dirty Deeds, Done Dirt Cheap
Seen him
by
8
AC/DC.
times. 8 times, baby. It's my favorite band of all time.
Come on.
Wow.
You've seen him 8 times?
Yes.
Nicely done.
Including as recently as, I guess, about a year and a half ago in Philly.
Wow. Look at you. You're a never-ending source of information. NBA analyst Tim Legler is with us. Okay, we discussed what happened with the block charge in Game 1 of the last week. Let's get back to the end of the game. The Cavs are down 1 with 4 seconds to play, 4.7 seconds to play in regulation. They got there to the free throw line because LeBron James, we think, and Ryan Hollins, our other NBA analyst, was in with us earlier, made the right play. George Hill was open. The only reason it wasn't for a layup was because Klay Thompson had to foul him to hook him there. So do you think LeBron made the right play by passing?
100% because you had 2 defenders standing at the elbows waiting for him to put the ball on the floor. Draymond Green was guarding George Hill, had absolutely no idea where he was, no regard for him. LeBron drives, he's going to run into bodies. And it's a kick out situation. Hill sees a gap, makes the cut. Klay Thompson basically saves an uncontested layup by grabbing him, dragging him to the ground. So no question he makes the right play.
First and foremost, Klay got beat, which he shouldn't have got beat, but he makes up for it by grabbing him and not letting him get the pass.
And maybe if that's Tristan Thompson, a 55% foul shooter,
maybe you do it.
Maybe LeBron is, he's because he's so smart and ahead of the curve,
knowing what's the next step.
Right. If they do foul him, he might not throw that Tristan Thompson. This is an 80% foul shooter, a guy you trust, a lot of playoff experience.
So he's at the line. Hill hits the first one. It's tie score 4.7 seconds ago. You're at the free throw line, and we talked about from Little League on in every sport, know what happens if the ball comes to me or what your situation is. Hill misses it. JR gets the rebound and dribbles out. Everybody's looking at him like, what are you, nuts? So what's the scenario there from him dribbling out, not shooting there, to nobody else calling a timeout, not even Ty Lue? What did you see or think in that situation?
Back up for 1 second because J.R. Smith, after the game, tried to say that he knew it was tied. So that's obviously ridiculous because you can read his lips clear as day, so I thought we were ahead.
Right.
So at some point, he lost time. He lost track of the situation. Now, it could have possibly been at the other end of the floor when they were up 2 and Steph Curry got the 3-point play. Like maybe he's in the moment, he's processing a lot and he's not thinking that was a 3-point play. Now we're down 1. It's not tied. Now you go down the other end of the floor. Okay, now George Hill, it has to make the second one, and J.R. Smith is looking at the bench the entire time. He's not, first of all, you necessarily shouldn't have to be looking at the scoreboard because you should have already known, okay, innately. You just have a feel for those situations. But he's looking at the bench the entire time, and he's kind of trying to figure out what are we going to do. Now, I personally think what was happening, he's processing the scenario in his mind before he shoots the second free throw that, okay, we're going to be up 1 here. Now we're going to defend.
So he thinks George is going to make that.
Correct. I think he's automatically making the assumption that he's going to make the free throw, and he's processing that. Like, what are we doing here? Like, are we sprinting back? Are we going to pressure up, token pressure? Are they going to call timeout? I don't know. And I think he's processing everything that's going to happen or could happen with a 1-point lead. Then the ball comes off the rim. He finds it in his hands. And then he just panics. Yeah. And now he dribbles out toward half court, clearly thinking the game is over.
Right.
And then tries to find somebody in the corner after the buzzer. It's too late.
So in your opinion, as Tim Legler is with us, look, obviously it's a bonehead decision by J.R. Smith, but 2 things could have prevented this from happening. One, George Hill making the free throw.
Yes.
You got to make that free throw, right?
I agree. Yeah,
okay.
And people that say, hey, man, free throws happen, missed free throws happen. You'll compare that to a missed free throw in the second quarter.
Correct.
Okay, that's winning time, and that's why you have good foul shooters on the line in those situations to make those and either ice a game or win a game.
All right, so that's one issue. And we believe the Cavs had a timeout there. Why didn't anyone call a timeout?
Well, Tyronn Lue tried to explain that by saying it kind of happened so quickly. As he started to dribble out, he thought he was going to turn and shoot it. Then and then Tyronn Lue said, and then I saw LeBron was open. I thought the ball was going to go to LeBron for a shot. So he didn't want to interrupt that. And as a coach, I kind of get where, now, look, if it's me, I've coached a lot of basketball in my life. I'm standing there on the sideline, and I'm processing every possible thing that could happen on this shot. And that ball comes off the rim, I would have already been thinking about, on an offensive rebound, as soon as that ball hit his hands, certainly as soon as I saw him start to take a dribble out toward the sideline, right? I'm calling timeout. And you probably have, 3.5 seconds maybe at that point. Tyronn Lue's basically saying once it got down into that 1 second range, you're thinking like, well,
it's too late then.
We're not going to get anything off.
It's too late.
Now.
But I would agree with you as a coach. You're sitting there thinking of all the scenarios, but I don't think there's any way in your mind one of the scenarios is he's dribbling the ball out because he thinks we're ahead. No. So I'm with you. He's probably thinking, is he going to turn and jump? Is he going to kick it out to LeBron to take a shot? I don't want to mess with that, but because there's no way he's thinking he's dribbling the ball out because he has the wrong score in his head.
The only truth in what happened out of J.R. Smith's mouth was when he got the rebound. I do agree that Kevin Durant's probably blocking that.
Exactly. I agree with that.
So he tries to separate, and I thought he's going to shoot a turnaround jumper. And then he just kept dribbling. And the happiest guy in the world is Derek Harper, one of my favorite teams.
Thank you. That's the first name I brought up.
I said it in a moment.
And then, of course, Magic Johnson did it in the finals that year against the Celtics.
Wow.
All right, this is why Legler's the best. You're not going anywhere.
Golic and Wingo.
Let's not expect too much. There's only one person out there that's expecting way too much out of this guy too early. We know who that is. It's his father.
We're fired up on a Friday morning. Golic and Wingo, ESPN Radio and ESPN News, presented by Progressive Insurance. All phone guests will join us on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And don't forget, and we've had some great ones so far, Mike, if you want to leave us a voicemail about what you thought about what went down in Game 1 of the NBA Finals, call us up, 860-506-5505. Give us what you think happened, and we will play some of the best ones on the air going forward. Glad you're with us. Mike Golic, Trey Wingo here, and Tim Legler, our NBA analyst, who doesn't want to leave, and we don't want him to either, because he's got the takes, and he is spewing them fast and furious today, and we'll get to a bunch more of them. Again, the majority of this show has been about what happened last night at Oracle. Warriors beat the Cavs by 10 in overtime, 124-114, but it was anything but a double-digit game. This was a back-and-forth contest. The Cavs actually were up 2 with 40 seconds left to play. Then the controversial block charge overturn on LeBron against Kevin Durant, which led to the game being tied, and then the issue with George Hill missing 1 of 2 free throws that would have won the game for him. All kinds of things there. So we have so much to get into. Tim, we've already gotten through the block charge. We've already gotten through the J.R. Smith thing. Again, you have another thing you want to get into? Let's go with it. What do you want to do here? You want to talk about
I want to ask one thing before we get on. I want to get on the court. Let's talk about actual basketball play and where I think Cleveland was at their best last night, and you chime in on what was going to game 2. But first, from your standpoint as a player, take everybody into the locker room after the game in Cleveland. What's going on with J.R. Smith? Tristan Thompson got thrown out at the end of the game. Take us in the locker room. What's going on in there?
I'll back it up before that. I thought, to me, it was very telling what they looked like in the intermission between the end of regulation.
You mean
and
the
overtime.
blank stares?
Blank stares, no communication, sitting there, trying to process what just happened, knowing they just hit them with every haymaker they could, and now they've got to go play 5 more minutes. I was really worried about their ability emotionally to reset. And then when they don't get the call with the George Hill strip, that was it.
Yep.
So right then I knew they were in trouble. So after the game, they go in the locker room. I can imagine at first, I've been not in a finals game, but I've been in games that were just gut-wrenching losses where there's a lot of just silence at first. A lot of silence, and people are sort of milling around. At some point, I'm sure someone, I don't know if it was LeBron, because even at his press conference, he still seemed like he was still fuming. And Tyronn Lue as well. Somebody is going to basically start to talk and make guys understand that we have to put this behind us. The best thing in the world is that they've got 2 days off instead of 1.
Right.
So they don't have to play till Sunday night. It gives them an extra day to process all of this, get themselves right, and then you start to go and focus on the ways in which you outplayed them, which they did for large portions of the game, and focus on the things that aren't going to change, that are in your favor. And that's what they're now going to focus on over the next 2 days. But I can imagine it was a death march on that bus
back
to the hotel. Quiet, no one really talking, everyone kind of in their own thoughts processing, and that's kind of what coaches let guys do a lot of times. Now you come in this morning, and then now it's us against the world mentality. Everybody's writing us off. Here's what we're going to do, and you start to get your spirit back, and that's going to take another day. And by Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, I think they're going to be back in the same place they were prior to game one and feeling like we came out here to get a split. Let's get game two, and we accomplished our mission.
Tim Legler with us, our NBA analyst in studio. First of all, Kevin Love. We got to touch on this real quickly. At the end of the game with the Tristan Thompson elbow that wasn't, he got ejected. Kevin Love was technically, he said he was on the court already talking to the official saying, I'm about to go in. And then he runs onto the court. We all know what happened in previous NBA situations where a guy runs onto the court to try and defend his guys. That's an automatic ejection for the next game. In light of how the controversial block charge call went down in game one, do you think that Kevin Love's going to be suspended for game two?
I hope not, and I don't think he should be, but I don't think it should have anything to do in looking at it and what happened earlier in the game. Like, you don't go, oh, you know what, they really kind of got tough break on that call, so let's give them this one. You've got to go by what the intent is supposed to be. Now, this is where I get fired up. I think the entire rule is absurd because it takes away the subjectivity of the league in looking at it. And I said the same thing when it happened with Amari Stoudemire that year, which was the best chance the Suns had to win a title during that run with Nash and D'Antoni, Stoudemire, and those guys. That cost him a game in a series against the Spurs that I think turned the series. And for me, if they can be subjective in looking at flagrant 1, flagrant 2, things like that, is there going to be a suspension of fine when the league looks at it the next day in a regular season game or a playoff game? Why can't they also be subjective about a guy's intent? Was he out there instigating? Did he run out there to escalate?
That's a great point.
He took 1 foot and put it on the court,
Good
which is what Stoudemire basically did. He didn't get anywhere near the action. He didn't get near the altercation at all. I understand they don't want guys jumping off the bench and getting involved in a fight. I get it. Well, then be subjective in what you're looking at. If you just stand up on an NBA bench and take 1 step forward, you are on the court. Okay? Right. To not allow a player to at least have that much reaction, if they then control themselves and don't go out there and put their hands on anybody and touch anybody, to me, it should be very subjective and not black and white on the court suspended. And that's what I've always had a problem with the rule. They allow subjectivity in other areas. There should also be subjectivity there and look at a guy's intent and did he escalate.
So the other side of that is
no suspension.
They need every one of those players because you're never sure outside of Kevin Love who's gonna be the guy. How about the reason he was on the court? Tristan Thompson, who got thrown out immediately with a flagrant 2 and made no contact. We were all stunned. Then pushes the ball in Draymond Green's face. Do you think he gets suspended for a game?
I think he will for this reason. Now, I agree. He never should have been ejected.
Nope.
Okay? Once you're ejected, you can't come then back onto the court and shove a ball in a guy's face. You're technically already supposed to be headed toward the locker room. You know, it's any ejection. I see guys not leave the court in a timely fashion. That's a problem. But then if you then take it further and you actually initiate physical contact with another player after you've been ejected, I mean, there's a good basis there to be suspended. I hope he's not, because I want to see both of these teams at full strength and see what happens, because that's just they're not deep as it is.
No.
So that's a blow. They can't lose anybody. And Golden State might have a guy coming back. Right. That's really important.
And Andre Iguodala.
So to me, I hope none of those things happen, but I do think there's a possibility, certainly for Tristan Thompson. And you know, if you really take it by the letter of the law, Kevin Love, I guess, is something they're going to have to look hard at.
Well, then there's the letter of the law, as Tim Legler, our NBA analyst, is with us, or the spirit of the law, and we'll figure out which one they go with, because that will be. Look, I hear what you're saying. They'll be refreshed and ready to steal one in game two, but without those guys, that might be impossible. Okay, but as we look at this game, obviously we focus on the end of the game because it's what we do. Everything in the last few minutes is much more, even though things that happened before that are just as important. For example, the end of the first half. At one point in the first half, the Cavs were up by 11 points, and I think they scored 1 bucket after that as Golden State did what they did. They won an unbelievable run. But right before the end of the half, they let, and I got to say, the same guy, J.R. Smith, went for a steal when he let Steph Curry get loose. And as soon as Steph Curry turned and there was nobody in front of him, everybody's like, oh, he's making that shot. And that tied the game. Those are the little things also that gets lost in the wash with the block charge and the missed free throw. But you can make an argument that was just as important as anything. That's That's a layup for Steph Curry. That's what he does in warm-ups consistently. And that went from a 3-point lead to a tie game at the half.
Yeah, and some people will say, well, what difference does that make? They still had a chance later to win the game. They were in control. And here's where I disagree. I kind of agree with what you're saying.
It all matters.
And not just the shot. I'll finish it with that. But when they're up 11, you've got a chance there if you manage those possessions, okay?
Correct.
You might go in up 8, 6, 10, 14. Who knows? That last 4 minutes or whatever that was, because it was 51-40, that last 4 minutes, manage that better. You got a double-digit lead going into the locker room. You feel a lot different. Okay. But whatever. They still had, that's a great team, and they still had basketball to play, and now they basically wipe it out. But here's where Cleveland still had the opportunity. They're up 3 with a 6-second difference on the shot clock, game clock, with the ball. Score, you're up 5 or 6, and they've got about 6 to 10 seconds. Maybe you get a stop. You walk in up 5-6. You just played a great half. You feel great. Not only do you not score, you then make that play.
Right.
So now this half that you played that you couldn't have played much better is tied. And not only is it tied, you're walking off the floor to one of those, and the roof is blown off the building. And look at the body language. If you show the replay one more time, look at the 3 Cavs directly under the rim as they're walking off the floor. I think it's Kevin Love, LeBron, somebody else, if they can possibly show that again. So it's a terrible gamble. You'll see right here. So watch the ball go in. Now watch these 3 Cavaliers: Tristan Thompson, LeBron. Oh, great.
Right.
Yeah, here we go.
Body language was everything.
And look at the Warriors bench. Yeah. They're coming onto the court like they're back at the club. I always called their bench like a nightclub. Like that's how much fun they're having over there, right? So the club lets out, and now they're walking out on the court. So it's momentum shifts. You feel a lot differently at halftime. Now they recovered well, but for me, it was the last 5 minutes of the second into the first 5 minutes of the third. That to me was the stretch where they were most outplayed, the Cavs. And other than that, I thought they controlled most of the first 48 minutes.
Okay, we're going to let you go to SportsCenter in a couple of minutes. But a lot of people think that the Cavaliers are mentally spent and are going to get destroyed in Game 2. How can they not be? What are your thoughts? How can Golden State is a little interesting after they win Game 1? So talk about that possibility.
Well, I disagree with that mentality that people think that that's what it's going to happen to the Cavs from the standpoint I've been here before. They have great resiliency, and LeBron James is too mentally tough to allow that to happen. Okay, that's first. Secondly, there were things that Golden State did defensively. If they keep doing that throughout the series, LeBron James is going to have a bunch of 40-point games. And primarily, you can't just keep switching Steph Curry on to LeBron James and ball screens. They did it all night.
All night.
And some of it unnecessarily so because he's 30 feet from the basket and all he wants is the switch. You have time to keep Durant or Iguodala if he plays Game 2, whoever on him. They chose not to. And look at the last 3 minutes of the game. LeBron was at the rim 3 times in that matchup. He can get wherever he wants to. There's no shot blocker back there. So if they keep doing that, LeBron James is going to continue to have these kinds of games. If that's the case, you're going to be in one-possession games late. And one thing I've always said about the Warriors, where they all susceptible, if you can get them in a one-possession game in the last 3 minutes, they tend to go for the kill shot.
Right.
Repeatedly. And if you can get them to do that, you can steal a game. So if I'm Tyronn Lue, LeBron James in that group, I'm focusing on that now. Not right now. They feel terrible waking up today. Over the course of the weekend, and by Sunday afternoon, you get yourself back in that mindset. These are all the great things we did. They're going to continue. Manage it differently if we get him in a one-possession game again. Let's get this game. Let's get a steal. LeBron James is too good. He's got too much experience for being in adversity in big moments. He's going to get the team ready to play.
All right, Leg, we appreciate it, brother.
All right.
Thanks, we'll lean on you again after Game 2. Always enjoy it.
This has been the Best of Golic and Wingo podcast. You can listen or subscribe on the ESPN app, Apple Podcasts, or just ask your smart speaker to play Golic and Wingo. Plus, you can check the guys out live weekday mornings from 6 to 10 Eastern on ESPN Radio and on ESPN News.